Today, we're looking at a massive shakeup in government agencies. There's also this new cash bonus you could be eligible for, and we're witnessing the federal government get rid of a lot of electric vehicles. Why is this happening? How could it affect you? Let's get into it. The Senate is proposing a plan to reorganize agencies, cut jobs, and streamline operations. They want to do all of this without any pushback from Congress or the courts. They want it to originate and be led by the executive branch with nothing in its way. A Senate committee recently added their changes to the big beautiful bill. This budget package gives the Trump administration $100 million over 10 years to make these changes happen. This will allow the Trump administration to downsize the federal workforce with less oversight. Typically, you would see Congress or federal judges intervene if there's a regulation that's not being followed or if there's a law not being followed. But this bill says we need to speed things up. The $100 million, that would be going to OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, which is currently led by Russ Volt. They would be getting the money, and a portion of that money would be to hire more people. So it's a little ironic. They would be hiring federal workers to fire federal workers. But that's where we're at right now. Also, the president would be required to submit an annual report each year detailing which agencies were merged or significantly impacted. So that report will be required all the way out to 2034, so the next 8 or 9 years. We have been witnessing federal courts interrupting a lot of the president's plans this year. If the Senate's bill does become law, a lot of these court battles that we're seeing right now, they wouldn't even matter. And the main court battles that we've been witnessing is the challenge to the massive layoffs, the rifts. When President Trump is taking out key leadership roles in independent agencies, that's turning into a court battle. Union, collective bargaining agreements being stripped. And then you have the probationary purge. Those are the main ones. The only action that was pretty large that hasn't been challenged, or it has but to a lesser extent, is the return to office mandate. So right now, federal workers, for the most part, are back in their offices. You do have some exceptions when it comes to people that are on disability or situations where the agency does not have the space. So they're asking their workers to telework for the time being. Now, because that action was so successful, you have seen thousands, if not tens of thousands of people leave their jobs looking for a better private sector job. So what's the big problem with giving absolute authority to the president when it comes to massive reorganizations? Isn't he the head of the executive branch? What could possibly go wrong? Well, there's a few areas of concern. Number one is weakened checks and balances. This means more power to the president, less power to Congress and the judges. It could also be seen as potentially rewarding political loyalty, regardless of competence. Overall, we're talking about less oversight. Then there's mass federal workforce replacement. This is replacing tens of thousands of federal workers with political appointees. And when you do this, you lose institutional knowledge. Now, some people discount that concept, but in the federal government, like a lot of organizations, you cannot just put a fresh body in a fresh seat. You have to have somebody train that individual up. It's not all on computers. It's not all digitalized at this point. And another thing I want you to ask yourself is what happens when a Democratic president comes into office? Is it a vicious, never-ending cycle of fire and then rehire? Then there's the disruption of services. This could be the worst-case scenario for the Trump administration, but also millions of Americans. So if you look at some of the key services the government offers the public, you're looking at Social Security, you're looking at Veteran Affairs, Medicaid, Medicare, immigration, passport services, all of that. So if that is negatively impacted, say it takes you longer to get access to those services, or even worse, if they stop, there will be a lot of outrage across the country. Then we have loss of expertise in key areas. We have some experts in agencies like the CDC, the EPA, the Department of Justice. We have lawyers, we have scientists, and they're either being forced out or they're being pressured. They understand that right now is not the best time to be a civil servant, so they're leaving. There's a percentage of that population of specialized individuals that are hard to replace. Then you have the potential for retaliation and abuse when it comes to partisan beliefs. If the goal is to replace a large segment of the federal workforce with political appointees, with Schedule C, that means if your political ideology does not fall in line exactly on where it should be, that means you're in jeopardy. That means you could be out. Also, we can see that the Senate's bill includes a bonuses for cost cutters program. Yep, that means that they're paying federal workers to identify wasteful spending. The way that that would work is you would go ahead and see a wasteful contract, or if there's a budget line that looks suspicious, you would email the Office of Inspector General, or you would call the Inspector General, let them know, give them a tip. If it turns out that it has merit, and in fact you have identified wasteful spending, you would get some money. You would get up to $10,000 or 1% of the money that you were able to save. The rest of that money would go towards paying down the national deficit, and you can rest assured that the money that you're receiving is going to be heavily taxed. Now, a lot of federal workers, they don't work that close to the budget, but for the people that do, this is going to be an opportunity for them to go ahead and report waste. It's not really new. The GSA tried something similar earlier this year. They did this by offering bonuses to cut training and to cut travel costs. Now, we've had people like Senator Rand Paul who's been advocating for this idea for years. They love this idea. So what we've seen in the government traditionally is an agency that has leftover money. They have excess money at the end of the fiscal year. They're in a rush to spend it. They'll buy chairs, tables, desks, computers, whatever, even if they don't need it, because if they don't use their money, then next year they will be receiving less money. So in this situation, somebody could raise their hand and say, hey, listen, we got $500,000 extra here. And as a result, that federal worker, they would get $10,000. But what counts as waste? One person could look at an item and say, this is completely wasteful, but they might not have the idea of it being a specialized item or a unique item. So what's wasteful for one individual might not be wasteful for another person, especially if they don't have the complete context of that item. There's already a law that's called False Claims Act, which pays whistleblowers, including federal workers, for reporting fraud and waste. It has recovered billions of dollars for the government. So why the new bonus program? Well, this one is mainly to do smaller items. You know, you have that bag of screws that's costing the government $50,000 or something that's smaller scale. All right, now let's talk about the U.S. Postal Service. The Senate's bill is taking a big cut from the Postal Service's budget, $1 billion that was dedicated towards electric trucks out of the $3 billion that they received under the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, they even want the Postal Service to sell the trucks that they have. They have about 66 electric trucks right now. They were supposed to have thousands. They have 66. They want them to sell their trucks. Now, the general understanding of solar power is that is more sustainable. It will be more reliable on the long term. And in the long term, it'll be cheaper than fossil fuels or pretty much any other type of energy source. This is something that is the future. It is the future of energy. You can run out of oil. You can run out of gas. But as long as the sun is burning, you are not going to run out of solar energy. And it's being made to be more efficient and more reliable and more abundant. So to go backwards from this is something I think a lot of people would not agree on. The Senate says USPS is on the path to financial collapse. Now, that's absolutely true. They've been bleeding cash for a long time. This isn't anything that's new. They've been bleeding money, and it's for a few good reasons. One, there's less mail, thanks to email. There's more packages, which cost more, and there's big debt. There's billions in losses, and they can't raise prices easily. The former Postmaster General had a 10-year plan called Delivering for America to break even, but it's not working. Initially, the Postal Service, they wanted to do 10% of their fleet electric. Then, with support from the Biden administration, they were going to go all green. But the main problem that happened here, in my view, in my opinion, is who they contracted with. They contracted with a company called Oshkosh in 2021, even though this company had no experience when it comes to commercial electric vehicles. They had absolutely none. And there was some shady business going on in Congress because there were some trades made. There were some stock trades made. $56 million of stock was purchased of Oshkosh just 20 hours before the contract was awarded. Oshkosh was never the front runner. There was another company that was supposed to get the contract that everyone thought was the favorite, but Oshkosh got it. And there were a lot of inquiries to find out exactly what was happening here because this is insider trading. Even if it wasn't the congressional representatives making the trade, it was them leaking the information so someone else could benefit, whether that be friends or family. You hate to hear stories like this because it lowers the trust in Congress, as if that could get lower. In addition to that, we're still witnessing people being fired and then rehired in rapid succession. You would think that the government would have it figured out by now, but they don't. It's like a puzzle that they're trying to piece together. A lot of trial and error. So if you want to hear the latest about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.